I still remember that Thursday afternoon with a strange mix of excitement and unease swirling in my chest. It was nearly 4 p.m. when my inbox dinged, the kind of sound that makes your heart flutter for reasons both hopeful and worrisome. I glanced at the company-wide email subject line, Annual Company Dinner. Everyone welcome. My pulse quickened, until I realized something. My name wasn't in the distribution list. You'd think I'd be used to it by then. After all, I'd been working at Red Wing Solutions for nearly 2 years, grinding as a mid-level analyst with measurably skyrocketing performance, sales numbers that would have made the quarterly presentation look like a victory lap. But recognition from my boss was rare, and formal invitations practically non-existent. Just then, Sophia, my teammate and the kindest soul in the office, breezed by my cubicle. She paused, squinted at her phone, and called out, "Hey, did you get the invite for dinner this Friday?" I shook my head, my throat dry for the first time of the day. Nope, didn't see anything. She frowned. We all did, even Mark from finance. But she hesitated, then her face lit up with a mischievous tilt. "Let me forward it to you." My heart tapped a hopeful beat as she forwarded the entire chain. I clicked, scanned the thread, and realized the distribution originally included everyone at my level and up, but someone deleted my email address from the list. It wasn't an accident. It was intentional. I leaned back in my chair, trying to swallow the bitter flavor of exclusion. This wasn't the first time I'd felt invisible at Red Wing. Project updates sent to the whole department, my boss forwarded them with zero comment, as if they were mine. Wins on campaigns I'd spearheaded, he took them to managers as if they were group efforts. A wave of frustration washed over me, brewing for weeks, maybe months. The gag of invisibility tightened around my chest until I could hardly breathe. I closed my eyes, picturing the dinner table, silk napkins, soft lighting, the CEO's speech that would inevitably gloss over me. It would be another evening of watching others get to shine while I sat quietly at the back, a ghost in plain sight. I bounced a pen off my desk as Sophia returned to her task. Our eyes met. "I'm so sorry, but you know you have to go, right?" she whispered, wide-eyed. I nodded, but inside, a knot twist tighter. "Yes," I said softly. This wasn't just about dinner. It was about being frozen out, about never being allowed the stage. But I also knew the stakes. If I didn't show up, I'd prove their point that I didn't belong. So I opened my laptop and typed a reply. "Count me in. Thanks for forwarding." As lunch rolled around, I walked through the corridors feeling eyes on me, some sympathetic, some curious, all aware of the subtle snub. I tapped out quick texts updating family and friends about the dinner, keeping my tone breezy even though my stomach felt like a pit of nails. Later, I stood in front of my closet, trying on dresses, skirts, coats I hadn't worn in months. I wasn't used to this level of scrutiny. The outfit had to strike the balance. Polished but not desperate, memorable but not flashy. I settled on a navy sheath dress. Simple cut, professional lines, a quiet confidence. I paired it with pearl earrings and a black blazer that hugged my shoulders just right. As I stepped off the elevator at 7 p.m. the next day, my stomach clenched even more tightly than the fabric of my dress. The foyer was abuzz with laughter, champagne glasses clinking, heels clicking on marble. I motioned to the event coordinator, she scanned my name and gestured me in. Everything behind me felt like a barrier I'd finally breached. But then I saw him, my boss, Daniel Turner, leaned casually against the bar, sipping a glass of red wine. He glanced in my direction, then raised a single eyebrow. Did he expect me? Did he somehow think I wouldn't show? I swallowed hard, squared my shoulders, and walked over. "Glad you could make it," he said, voice smooth but eyes cold. His words tasted empty, like he'd written them for someone else. Around us, people laughed, plates of hors d'oeuvres moved in circular trays like little solar systems. "Of course," I answered, heart steady. My voice just loud enough to be heard in the glow of overhead chandeliers. This night would not be my erasure. As I stepped deeper into the organized chaos of tables, lights, and networking circles, I reminded myself, I deserve this seat. I deserve to be here. They might have tried to write me out of history, but tonight, I wrote myself back in. The ballroom shimmered with every step I took. Chandeliers dripping crystals, the soft hum of a live jazz quartet near the corner stage, and a faint aroma of grilled lamb and aged red wine drifting through the air. I gripped my glass of sparkling water with one hand and my phone with the other, screen off, notifications off. If confidence was a dress code, I had stitched it together with nerves and silence. I had spent 2 hours preparing that afternoon. The navy blue dress I chose wasn't expensive, but it fit me like a promise. Clean lines, tailored waist, modest neckline. Paired with my mother's pearl earrings and a blazer I'd had since my first internship, I felt proud. Not flashy, not trying too hard, just right. Until I saw him. Daniel Turner, my boss, leaned against the open bar, holding a glass of Malbec like it was part of his brand identity. He stood among two product directors and a woman in a red silk jumpsuit I didn't recognize. He was mid-laugh when his eyes locked on mine. A full scan, top to bottom. Not more than 2 seconds, but long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. He didn't expect me to show up. As I approached the group, he turned slightly toward them, not toward me, and said loud enough for all to hear, "Looks like someone mixed up gala with happy hour at HR." Laughter. Not from everyone, but enough to sting. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I offered a polite smile and said clearly, "Nice blazer, Daniel. Prada or just attitude?" A cough, a stifled laugh from the director of product. Daniel's smile tightened, but his eyes turned sharp. "You've always been witty," he said, adjusting his tie. "But you know, image counts too, right?" Ah, yes, the classic backhanded reminder. You don't belong here. I'd heard that tune in 100 different tones from him. I excused myself and walked deeper into the event, mingling, smiling. I passed familiar faces and unfamiliar glances, that same subtle tension in the air, not quite exclusion, not quite acceptance. A coworker from IT, Nate, tapped my shoulder gently. "Hey," he said, "didn't you design that onboarding model we're using now, the interactive chart?" I blinked. "Yes. We implemented it last quarter, cut transition time by 30%. Good work." I thanked him, surprised. That success had never made it to my performance review. I turned just enough to see Daniel watching me from across the room. His gaze wasn't amused anymore. It was alert, focused, like he was watching something fall apart. Because I was breaking the story he had built. The forgettable analyst, the quiet support role, the one who couldn't lead or shine or be seen. Then someone touched my elbow lightly. Melissa from HR. "You look incredible," she whispered. "Blue suits you." "Thank you," I replied, flattered. She leaned in just slightly closer. "And don't let Daniel get to you. We're collecting things now." "Collecting?" I asked, confused. She gave me a calm, almost reassuring nod. The board authorized recordings at events, audio and visual, for accountability. She nodded upward toward a crystal chandelier. "Smile," she said. "The mic's in the light fixture." I felt something shift in my spine. Not fear, relief. He had said that line, that demeaning comment, the mockery, the public dig, on tape, under chandeliers and cocktails, in front of senior staff. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. The system, flawed as it was, had eyes now. And Daniel, he was no longer untouchable. I spent the rest of the evening moving with deliberate grace, not out of pride, but out of quiet power. I belonged here, not because he said so, but because I never stopped showing up. I never liked speeches, but that night I prayed for one. When the CEO stepped up to the mic, everyone drifted toward the stage area, glasses in hand, murmurs fading, anticipation building. I took a spot near the back, in a quiet corner beside the dessert table, trying to blend in. I was good at that. Daniel, however, was front and center. His silver cufflinks caught the light every time he raised his hand to brush back his hair. His laugh, too loud for the moment, kept cutting through the crowd like a knife that didn't belong at the table. After the CEO's usual praise-filled toast, there was a brief intermission, and then came the team acknowledgments. "I want to recognize a few people who made this year what it was," the CEO said warmly. "These names were brought to me by managers and by results. Some of you I've never had the pleasure to meet in person, yet." I felt the slightest flicker of possibility, a ridiculous, fragile thing. I crushed it quietly with a sip of mineral water. The first name he called wasn't mine, nor the second or third. But when he paused, looking down at the card, he smiled differently. "And someone I've been hearing about from multiple departments. Apparently, her optimization model cut onboarding time by a full month. Marina Santos, would you raise your hand?" My heart punched my ribs. I hesitated. The clapping had already started. People turned. I slowly lifted my hand. A few heads nodded toward me, people I didn't even know. One woman mouthed, "Congrats." Another gave me a genuine smile. For a second, I was completely still. That's when it happened. Daniel stepped forward, not toward me, but toward the CEO. He leaned toward the mic and said, laughing, "She didn't build that alone. I mean, let's not start rewarding interns for using templates." The room didn't laugh. Not even a chuckle. The air changed, visibly. I felt something detach inside me, like a string in a piano snapping mid-performance. I looked around. Some people avoided eye contact. Others stared directly at me. One guy from finance actually winced. I didn't blink. I didn't speak. But inside, I was screaming. The CEO raised his eyebrows. "Duly noted," he said with zero warmth. Then he moved on, without even glancing at Daniel again. Melissa from HR was standing behind me. She muttered under her breath. And that's recording number 3. 3? My stomach flipped. The clapping resumed, awkwardly at first, but it built. Not for Daniel, for me. I took one deep breath, then another. I didn't cry. I didn't leave. I stood my ground, surrounded by the sound of validation. Daniel turned away, fast, his jaw clenched, his arrogance dimmed. And I realized something dangerous. He thought he could erase me, in public, and still walk away unscathed. He had no idea the cameras were rolling. I stood there, heart pounding, the applause still echoing faintly in my ears. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't floating in pride. I was grounded in something sharper, something like rage, cloaked in professionalism. As people moved toward the buffet tables and lounge areas, I slipped away to get a breath of air. I didn't want to cry in the restroom. I didn't even want to blink too hard. I just needed 1 minute where I didn't have to pretend I was fine. I walked toward the far end of the ballroom, near the tall glass doors that led to a candlelit terrace. I wasn't even sure if it was open to guests, but I pushed one open and stepped outside. The night air was cold, clean, real. I stood alone for maybe 30 seconds before I heard footsteps behind me. I turned instinctively, expecting Melissa or maybe Sophia. But it was one of the waitresses, a woman around my age, maybe younger, black hair tied into a tight bun, a tray of empty champagne flutes in her hands. She glanced at me, then tilted her head slightly. "You okay?" I smiled weakly. "I'm not sure yet." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "Sorry, I'm not supposed to talk to guests like this, but I saw what happened." I blinked. "You mean..." The comment, the way he said it. People don't always realize how loud their cruelty is. I stared at her, surprised. Her eyes weren't pitying. They were alert, steady, like someone who had seen too much, too often. "I know who you are," she continued. "Not by name, but I've worked 3 of these dinners. You're always the one staying quiet in the back while your team takes credit." I didn't know what to say. She leaned in slightly. "They've had cameras here for months. After what happened at the leadership offsite last year, HR didn't want to risk anything. They log behavior patterns now, especially verbal misconduct." I felt my stomach turn. "What happened last year?" She shrugged. "Someone got promoted, then fired. Turns out they were recording how he treated junior staff at the retreat. Real bad stuff." I looked back toward the ballroom. Daniel's voice echoed in my memory. "Let's not start rewarding interns." The waitress smiled softly. "Just know you're not the only one who noticed, and you're not crazy." That last part broke me a little, because the truth is, I had started to think maybe I was imagining it all. The snubs, the erasure, the twisted narratives. "Thank you," I said, my voice low. "Really." She smiled again, then turned away. "Good luck in there. You're about to be in the middle of something bigger than you think." I stayed outside a little longer, letting the cold sharpen me. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't invisible. And the story wasn't his to tell anymore. It was mine. Daniel was still moving from group to group, laughing a little too hard, gesturing with that theatrical swagger he'd mastered. But it was different now. The laughter was thinner. People weren't leaning in the same way. I stood near the dessert table, pretending to study the tarts, but I was watching him, and more importantly, I was watching who was watching him, or rather, who wasn't anymore. Then something unexpected happened. The CEO approached me directly. "Marina, right?" he said, smiling. I nodded, stunned. "I was serious earlier. That onboarding system saved us a fortune. And your name came up again last week in a conversation with external consultants." My throat tightened. "I didn't know that." He smiled. "You will soon." And just like that, he turned, waved to someone across the room, and walked off. 10 minutes later, someone from strategy asked to see the template I'd built. Another team lead asked if I'd be open to presenting at a cross-departmental seminar. It was surreal. Daniel hovered nearby the entire time. I could feel his presence like static. And then, right when I was speaking with 2 executives from operations, he cut in. "We're lucky to have Marina," he said, false warmth dripping from every word. "She's got a good eye for formatting, keeps things clean." The executives gave him a polite nod, then one of them turned to me and said clearly, "We're more interested in the thinking behind it. Maybe you could walk us through it sometime." Daniel's smile cracked. The second executive added, "We're trying to encourage cross-functional leadership, people who solve, not just serve." I said yes, calmly, graciously, but inside, I was on fire. The applause I had imagined for years wasn't a roar. It was a whisper of real respect, and it was louder than anything Daniel could fake. Monday mornings at Red Wing Solutions were usually predictable. Tired glances, lukewarm coffee, and the click of keyboards filling the silence. But not that Monday. Not after the gala. I arrived 10 minutes early, like I always did, not because I had to, but because being early made me feel protected. The office was still quiet, lights dim, the cleaning staff just finishing their rounds. My computer booted up slowly, like even it was reluctant to start the week. I sipped my coffee, expecting the usual inbox flood. Team reports, follow-ups, the occasional passive-aggressive note from Daniel about maintaining formatting standards. But what I saw stopped me cold. Subject: HR request, confidential meeting. My cursor hovered over it. The timestamp read 7:12 a.m., meaning it was sent before I even arrived. I clicked it open. "Dear Marina, we would like to schedule a brief confidential meeting with you today to follow up on the company dinner event. Time, 11:30 a.m. Location, HR conference room, 3rd floor. Please confirm your availability. This meeting is not disciplinary. Melissa Cruz, Senior HR Coordinator." My breath caught. I reread it twice, My fingers froze above the keyboard. They had seen it. They had seen it. The comment, the moment, his tone, the silence that followed. And the waitress was right. It had all been logged. I hit reply and typed, "Confirmed. I'll be there." Then I sat very, very still. For the next hour, I tried to focus on my tasks, but my brain kept drifting. What did they want? Was this support? Damage control? A cover-up? At 9:12 a.m., Daniel strolled into the office like nothing had happened. He wore a navy suit almost identical to the one from the dinner and whistled lightly under his breath. His eyes met mine just briefly, but he didn't say a word. No good morning, no smug remark, just silence. That silence said everything. He knew. I watched him from my desk as he made coffee, typed emails, walked into a short team huddle. His movements had an edge, too tight, too precise, like someone bracing for impact but pretending they weren't. At 11:27, I grabbed my notebook and walked to the elevator. My palms were sweating, my chest was tight, but my stride, solid. The HR conference room was cooler than I expected. Glass walls, 2 potted plants, a soft hum from the AC. Melissa was already there, along with Jordan, one of the senior legal advisors. That detail made my pulse spike. They stood as I entered, smiled, neutral, professional. "Thanks for coming in, Marina," Melissa said. "We just want to ask a few questions. Nothing stressful." I nodded and sat down. Jordan opened a laptop. "You're probably aware that Red Wing records certain company-sponsored events as part of our workplace conduct initiative." I stayed still. "I am now." Melissa smiled faintly. "You were mentioned in a few post-event reports, all positive. And the footage? Well, it speaks for itself." There was a pause. Then Jordan said, "We'd like to play a short clip for the record. We're required to notify you." He clicked something. The screen blinked. And then, there it was. The moment. Daniel's voice. His laugh. "Let's not start rewarding interns for using templates." The audio was crystal clear. No background chatter, no ambiguity. Melissa turned down the volume. "That comment, among others from the past, is under review. This isn't about punishment. It's about culture." Jordan added, "We're not asking you to file a complaint. We simply want to document your experience, if you're willing." I looked at them both. I felt seen. Not just for what I'd built or delivered, but for what I had endured quietly. "Yes," I said, voice firm. "I'm willing." Melissa nodded. "Thank you. And just so you know, your performance has not gone unnoticed, especially not this quarter." I left the room with my head high. The weight didn't disappear, but it shifted. It was no longer just mine to carry. Something was happening, and this time it was going to be on the record. I didn't expect them to send me the file, not the full version. But that afternoon, as I was preparing my slides for the next week's quarterly review, a new email popped up in my inbox. The subject line was plain: "Requested recording, event footage access," but my heartbeat jumped anyway. I clicked it open, expecting a download link, maybe a trimmed clip of the gala's public segment, but what I found instead was a private streaming link. No expiration, no password. Attached, a short note. "Marina, per your verbal agreement in today's HR meeting, we're providing access to the full recording captured during the gala for transparency purposes. Please note, this material is confidential and for your review only. Regards, HR, Internal Culture Division." For a second, I just stared at it. Then I closed my office door. Headphones in, deep breath. I clicked play. The screen faded in with the company logo, a timestamp, and soft background music, the live jazz band that had played near the entrance. For the first few minutes, it was just the crowd arriving. People laughing, hugging, toasting, all harmless. Then I saw myself enter, slightly hesitant, holding that glass of sparkling water like it was a shield. And I saw him, Daniel, leaning against the bar, scanning the room, pausing when he spotted me. The eyebrow raise, the smirk, the happy hour comment, all caught with perfect clarity. But then something unexpected happened. The video didn't cut away. It followed him. For the next 10 minutes, I watched him float from group to group, refilling his wine, speaking just loud enough to be heard. "She always overcompensates," he said to someone I didn't recognize. "Looks professional until you ask her to lead." I basically had to redo her whole framework. It was a mess. "She's got the attitude of a VP and the experience of an intern." I stopped breathing. These weren't jokes. They weren't offhand remarks. They were surgical, designed to discredit me. And he said them all with a smile, with charm, with ease. The camera caught every word, every false claim, every orchestrated dig. And the worst part? Some people nodded. Others just sipped their drinks. No one pushed back. I watched as the camera shifted again, following him to a group of junior associates. One of them asked about my onboarding model. Daniel chuckled and said, "It's cute that she's passionate, but if we're being honest, I added the real structure." Cute. He called my work cute. I pressed pause. My hands were shaking. Not from sadness, not anymore. From anger, from clarity, from knowing that for months he hadn't just ignored me, he had actively rewritten my contributions in real time. And I had proof now. I sat there in silence, staring at the frozen image of him laughing into his wineglass. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't workplace friction. This was targeted erosion of credit, of confidence, of visibility. And now the erosion had been exposed. The email came exactly 11 days after the gala. I was at my desk reviewing user data for the product rollout when the notification popped up. Subject line, "Internal transfer confirmation, effective immediately." At first, I didn't believe it was real. I opened it slowly, my eyes scanning each word like they were written in another language. But no, it was clear, concise, and final. "Marina, congratulations. As discussed in our follow-up, you have been approved for internal transfer to the Strategic Development Unit under direct supervision of EVP Rachel Morales. This move reflects the leadership's recognition of your individual contributions and your ability to drive innovation across departments. Your new workspace will be ready Monday, 14th floor, South Wing. Please coordinate with HR for a smooth transition. Welcome to your next chapter." I read it again, then again. The 14th floor. That was executive territory, the offices with glass walls and city views, where decisions happened, where Daniel had never been invited. I looked across the room and saw him. Daniel sat at his desk, eyes locked on his screen, shoulders tight. He hadn't spoken to me since the HR meeting. He knew something was shifting. He just didn't know how much. Not yet. I stood, collected my notebook, and walked quietly to the elevator. When the doors opened on the 14th floor, it felt like a different company. Quiet, spacious, plants that were actually alive, no shared desks, and sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the polished floor in gold. A woman from facilities greeted me with a soft smile. "Office 1407, she said. "Corner unit, best view on the floor." I followed the hallway until I reached it, and stopped. The nameplate had already been changed. M. Santos, Strategy and Ops, in clean silver letters. I reached for the handle, turned it, and stepped in. The view hit me like a movie scene. A sweeping skyline, wide glass, not just an office, a statement, one that whispered, "You were never invisible. They just weren't ready to see you." I set my notebook on the desk, took a deep breath, and then, as if the universe needed one final moment of poetry, My phone buzzed. It was a calendar alert. Daniel Turner, exit interview, scheduled. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., HR conference room. I smiled. No gloating, no revenge speech, just the quiet certainty of consequences unfolding. He had tried to erase me. He had tried to rewrite the story. But the system he trusted to protect him recorded everything. And the version that remained was mine. I sat in the chair behind my new desk, leaned back, and looked out the window. The city stretched endlessly before me. Sharp edges, bright light, clear sky. It was the same company, but I was no longer the same woman. And this time, when the light hit me, I didn't shrink. I stood in it.